Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're digging into a really interesting market forecast. It's all about global, flexible, transparent plastics materials you're seeing more and more of.
That's right. We've got some data here from a cognitive market research report. It looks ahead from 2021, projecting out all the way to 2033.
Hmm.
So, yeah, it's a real deep dive into the numbers, where the growth is expected, and, which regions are really pushing things forward.
And our goal here is to unpack all that data, understand the story behind these numbers, and figure out where this market is actually heading globally.
Exactly.
And get ready, because while the overall trend is definitely growth, the speed of that growth, well, it really changes depending on where you look in the world.
It really does. So let's set the global scene first. The source tells us this market was already pretty big back in 2021. We're talking $11,570.6 million.
$11.5 billion. That's quite a starting point. And the report sees it climbing steadily to $14,258 million by 2025.
Right, a steady climb. But the big leap is really towards the end of the forecast period. They're projecting it hits $21,650.3 million by 2033.
Wow. Okay, so almost double the 2021 size.
Pretty much.
And to gauge that growth speed, we look at the CAGR, the compound annual growth rate. Globally, over this whole period, the source puts it at 5.36%.
Okay.
So think of that 5.36% as like the average global speed limit for this market. It gives us a baseline to compare everyone else against.
Makes sense. So let's zoom in first on North America. In 2021, that region was a significant chunk, 3,378.61 million.
Okay, and the projection takes it to 4,020.76 million in 2025, and then up to 5,910.54 million by 2033.
Right. Now, North America's overall CAGR for that period, it's 4.934%.
Ah, okay, so a bit under that global 5.36% average.
Exactly. It suggests, maybe other parts of the world are growing a bit faster, pulling that global average up.
Right, so slower than average,
Like-
but drilling down within North America, how does it break out?
Well, the U.S. is obviously the giant here, 2,597.48 million in 2021, forecast to grow to 4,490.83 million by 2033.
And it's CAGR.
4.848%. So very close to that overall North American rate. Kind of sets the pace for the region, really.
Okay. But then you look at Canada.
Yeah, Canada's interesting. Started smaller, $437.192 million in 2021, but its projected CAGR up to 2033 is 5.328%.
Oh, so that's actually right on the global average, faster than the U.S.
Exactly, outpacing its bigger neighbor there.
Even Mexico.
Mexico's also showing decent growth, $343.943 million in 2021, heading towards $619.425 million in 2033. That's a CAGR of 5.06%.
Okay. So within North America, you've got the U.S. sort of pulling the regional average down slightly below global, while Canada's right on track with the global average, and Mexico's a little bit above the U.S. pace, too. Interesting mix.
Definitely. Now let's hop across the Atlantic to Europe, another big market in 2021.
2000.
719.09 million, projected to grow to 4,892.98 million by 2033.
And Europe's regional CAGR?
Comes in at 5.186%.
Okay, so again, solid growth, but like North America, just a little under that global 5.36%.
Right. But things get pretty varied when you look at individual countries in Europe. Take Germany, for example.
Okay.
Started at $410.582 million in 2021. Projected to hit $792.662 million by 2033. And its CAGR, a strong 5.684%.
Wow. Okay, so that's noticeably higher than the European average and the global average. Makes you wonder what's driving that in Germany specifically, maybe particular industries.
Could be. Now, contrast that with, say, Italy or Sweden. Italy's forecast goes from $122.413 million up to just $181.04 million by 2033. The CAGR is only 3.845%.
Much slower.
And Sweden's is even lower, 3.76%, growing from $122.359 million to $190.826 million.
Yeah, those are definitely lagging behind the others. Maybe different industrial setups or slower uptake of tech using these plastics. Could even be regulations compared to faster growers like Germany or Spain. What was Spain's?
Spain's looking pretty solid, actually, 5.381% KGR. So right up there near the global average.
Okay, and the UK. France, right.
The UK shows a healthy 5.409% CAGR. France is a bit slower, 4.206%, and Russia's kind of near that regional average, 4.906%.
Right. This source also mentions a few others: Denmark, Switzerland, Luxembourg.
Yeah, quick rundown. Denmark's at 4.878%, Switzerland 4.438%, and Luxembourg 4.691%. But what's also interesting is the rest of Europe category.
Ah, the collective group.
Exactly. That segment started at $668.842 million in 2021, projected to reach $1,338.23 million by 2033, and its CAGR is 5.88%.
Oh, wow. So that combined group of other European countries is actually growing faster than the European average and faster than the global average, too.
Yeah, suggests strong growth across quite a few other nations on the continent that weren't listed individually.
Fascinating. Okay, let's pivot to Asia Pacific. Often a powerhouse in materials markets. Does the data back that up here?
Oh, absolutely. This source definitely confirms that. APAC was already the biggest regional market back in 2021. 4,176.98 million.
Nearly 4.2 billion.
Yeah.
And the growth?
Explosive is probably the right word. It's expected to jump to 5,175.65 million by 2025, and then a huge 8,248.78 million by 2033.
8.25 billion by 2033. And the CAGR for APAC?
It's 5.999%. Let's call it 6%.
6%. Okay, so that is the highest regional growth rate we've seen, clearly outpacing the global average North America, Europe.
By a noticeable margin. And when you look at the countries driving it, well,
Yeah.
China.
Yeah.
In 2021, China alone was a $1,520.42 million market, projected to reach an incredible $3,241.77 million by 2033.
Just China? Wow. And its growth rate?
China's CAGR is, get this, 6.587%.
6.6% almost. That's
Right.
that's massive. Highest country rate we've discussed so far. Really highlights the scale and the speed there.
Absolutely. And India is right there with it. Started smaller, $732.643 million in 2021,
Okay.
but it's forecast to grow to $1,554.07 million by 2033. The CAGR, equally impressive, 6.502%.
Incredible. So China and India together, that's just a massive engine driving this whole global market forward.
No question. Other key APAC markets show solid growth too, just maybe not quite that breakneck pace. Japan's projected at 5.563% CAGR.
Still very strong.
Yeah. South Korea's at 5.031%. Australia, 4.744%.
Yeah.
Singapore, 4.477%.
Okay. And Southeast Asia as a group.
Strong. 5.256% TAGR. Taiwan's projected for 5.057%. And even the rest of APAC segment shows a healthy 5.662% CAGR. So yeah, Asia-Pacific is clearly the leader in projected growth speed.
Undeniably. Okay, let's shift gears. South America.
South America. The market there was $543.818 million in 2021, projected to reach $1,320.67 million by 2033,
And the regional CAGR.
5.578%.
Oh, interesting. So that's actually above the global average, too. Faster projected speed than North America and Europe.
That's right. And Brazil looks like a key driver there, showing a strong 5.776% CAGR, going from about $178 million to over $444 million.
Okay. Any others stand out?
Colombia also looks pretty strong, 5.68% CAGR. Argentina is projected around 4.8%, Peru just under 4.9%, Chile about 5.2%.
And the rest of South America.
Also robust growth forecast there, actually, 5.735% CAGR for that collective segment.
So another region where the rest of group is pulling strong numbers. Okay, Middle East.
Right, the Middle East. Market size in 2021 was $474.394 million, growing to a projected $757.762 million by 2033.
And the growth rate, the CAGR.
It's 3.616%.
Ah, okay, so that is the lowest regional growth rate in this report, noticeably slower than the global average.
Yeah, and within the Middle East, the growth speeds are generally more modest.
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia, which is the largest market there, shows a KGR of just 3.135%.
Pretty slow.
Turkey's around 3.4%. The UAE and Egypt are a bit faster, closer to 3.8 or 3.9%. Qatar is about 3.77%, generally slower across the board for those main listed countries.
But isn't there something weird with the rest of Middle East data in this report?
Yes. You spotted that. Here's a really striking bit. The rest of Middle East segment. It starts absolutely tiny in 2021, $23.72 million.
Okay.
It barely grows by 2025, only up to $24.524 million. But then between 2025 and 2033, it's projected to explode, relatively speaking, to $42.283 million.
So hardly any growth early on, then a huge surge. What does that do to the overall CAGR for that segment?
It results in a GGR of 7.047% over the whole 2021-2033 period.
7%. That's actually the highest individual CAGR number mentioned anywhere in this entire source, isn't it?
It is. For this tiny collective segment, it's a real anomaly in the data. Tiny market share today, but projected acceleration after 2025 is just remarkable. Makes you wonder what might be planned or starting up in those other Middle Eastern countries.
Yeah, really curious. Okay, one region left. Africa.
Africa. Market size was $277.694 million in 2021, projected to reach $519.608 million by 2033.
And the CAGR for Africa.
Comes in at 4.311%.
Okay, so below the global average, below APAC, South America, Europe, but still, solid growth projected.
Exactly. Nigeria is projected for about 4.5% CAGR. South Africa, which is the largest market listed there, is a bit slower at 4.15% CAGR.
Got it. So let's try and wrap our heads around all these numbers. Bringing it all together, what's the main story?
Well, the big picture is definitely growth. The global market for flexible, transparent plastics looks set to expand pretty significantly out to 2033.
But the way it grows varies hugely. Asia Pacific is just the clear leader in terms of speed, driven by that incredible scale and pace in China and India.
Right. Those two countries alone are adding massive volume. Then you have regions like South America and Europe showing solid growth, often around or even above that global average, but with real differences within them, like Germany standing out in Europe, Brazil, and Colombia in South America.
Meanwhile, North America, while it's a huge market, is projected to grow just a bit slower than the global pace. And the Middle East shows the slowest regional growth, except for that bizarrely fast rest of Middle East segment right at the end.
And we also have to remember the scale, right? China's market in 2021 was already bigger than the entire projected 2033 markets for South America, the Middle East, and Africa all put together.
That's a really good point. High growth on a massive base like China has a disproportionate global impact.
Absolutely.
So for you listening, what does all this mean? Well, these numbers are behind materials showing up more and more in your everyday life. Think flexible packaging, maybe bendable phone screens someday soon, flexible solar cells.
Yeah. And seeing where the growth is fastest, like APAC, gives you clues about where global manufacturing might be shifting, where tech adoption is speeding up, or where economic development is really taking off in certain sectors.
Conversely, slower growth in some established markets might mean they're mature, maybe saturated, or perhaps looking at different material solutions. And those distinct differences we saw, like Germany growing much faster than Italy,
Right.
that could reflect totally different demands from their core industries, maybe automotive, electronics, specialized packaging. They all need different things from these kinds of plastics.
And that rest of Middle East surge, that's a real head-scratcher. Could be, I don't know, major investments in new industries kicking in after 2025, new infrastructure, export drives. It's hard to tell from just this data, but it's fascinating. Understanding these numbers really gives you a window into the economic currents and the innovation tied to these versatile materials worldwide.
Yeah. So wrapping up this deep dive, the forecast points to universal growth for flexible, transparent plastics through 2033. But the engines are different across the globe. Asia Pacific, especially China and India, is hitting the accelerator hard.
While other regions show more moderate or, quite varied growth patterns.
So given everything we've looked at these really distinct speeds and scales around the world, here's something to think about. What factors do you think are most responsible for the big demand differences we see? Why might Germany be growing so much faster than Italy in this market, or China so much faster than Saudi Arabia?
Good question to ponder.
Thanks for exploring this data with us in this deep dive.
Okay, let's dive right in. Film cameras. You'd probably think they're basically relics now, right? Gathering dust.
Yeah, totally, like something from a bygone era.
Right.
But the sources we looked at, they tell this, really surprising story, a market that's actually finding some new life.
Exactly. So that's what this deep dive's all about. The global film camera market.
And our mission really is to figure out why. Why is this old school analog tech seeing a kind of resurgence? It's this interesting mix of, old technology and new trends, new market forces.
Even now in our super digital world.
Right.
So first things first, just so we're all on the same page.
Right.
What exactly is a film camera in the context of this research we're digging into?
Okay, so at its core, it's that classic camera, the one that uses actual photographic film, that light-sensitive stuff to capture an image.
Right, the kind you have to get developed.
Exactly. It needs chemical processing.
Right.
And the report covers a pretty wide range, your standard 35mm, medium format, even large format cameras. Oh, and instant cameras too, like Polaroids or Instax.
And people use them for
Yeah.
all sorts.
Yeah, everything from just casual snapshots to serious professional art, even some niche industrial applications, apparently.
Okay, so the big question then, why are people picking these up again? The research highlights a few key drivers, doesn't it?
It does. One really major factor that comes up is rising disposable income, globally speaking.
Okay, so people just have more money to spend.
Pretty much. As people have a bit more financial freedom, they're, more likely to spend on hobbies, maybe creative outlets, or just things that offer a unique sort of experience.
And that ties into something maybe a bit deeper, yeah. The data seems to point really strongly towards nostalgia and this desire for self-expression.
Definitely. Especially among, say, younger demographics, film cameras have almost become this cool creative tool, sometimes even a fashion statement.
Right, that whole tangible process, the vintage look, getting an instant print from some models.
hmm It really resonates. The sources mention this particularly with younger women, creative communities looking for different ways to express themselves, something unique.
It's not just about the money or looking back. It's becoming a deliberate artistic choice,
Exactly.
a medium in itself.
But okay, let's be real for a second. It can't all be positive growth.
Mm.
What are the big restraints? What's sort of holding this market back?
Well, the biggest, most obvious challenge is just the sheer dominance of digital technology.
Yeah, smartphone cameras.
Everywhere. They offer instant results, incredible convenience, and let's face it, they're way more cost-effective over time compared to buying film, paying for processing.
That constant cost.
Right. So this easy, readily available substitute, it's a massive hurdle for film camera growth, especially in the mainstream.
That digital convenience is really the main.
The main battleground, yeah, absolutely.
But the sources also mention ways the market is finding opportunities despite that.
Oh, for sure. A really significant opportunity lies in just how widespread e-commerce is now. Online platforms. So reaching the right people.
Exactly. It lets manufacturers, sellers, everyone connect directly with that quite specific niche audience all over the world. It overcomes, geographical limits.
And things get even more complicated when you factor in global trade, right? We see things like trade tariffs affecting electronics components,
Yes, that's in there too. Tariffs mentioned in the sources, some pretty significant ones, they disrupt how companies get their parts, and that can bump up manufacturing costs.
which forces them to adapt.
Yeah, it's leading some players to look into diversifying their supply chains, maybe looking at manufacturing options in places like India or Vietnam, for example. It just shows how these big global economic forces ripple down even to a niche market like film cameras.
It's fascinating, isn't it, how a market for essentially older tech is being shaped by very modern consumer trends, global economics, and always that shadow of the digital alternative.
And you see big players like Fujifilm Holdings America mentioned in the sources. They operate across both traditional film and modern stuff like medical imaging. It shows that blend.
Right.
So yeah, bringing it all together, this deep dive shows the film camera market isn't just like clinging on. For its dedicated audience, it seems to be thriving in its own way.
Fueled by.
Fueled by, well, rising incomes, that powerful nostalgia factor, the need for self-expression, and it's being enabled by online selling platforms
But still fighting that digital convenience battle.
and navigating those bigger economic currents like trade.
Yeah. And, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What does this continued, maybe even growing, interest in a slower, more tactile, chemical-based way of taking photos? What does that tell us about our relationship with instant digital tech today?
That's a good question.
What is it about these older processes, the ones that maybe demand a bit more patience, a bit more effort? What aspects of that might resonate with you personally in a world that's just built for speed?
Definitely something to think about.
Okay, that wraps up our deep dive into the global film camera market.